And along with Matthew Spot Fulton, we're here to explore the latest in the industry, QuickBooks, and integrations that matter to you. For more details on the series, visit qbpowerhour.com. Before we get started with the main content, we want to cover a few housekeeping tips. Any handouts or resources mentioned today will be provided for download, so no frantic note-taking required. If you miss anything or want to revisit a section, don't worry. Video and audio replays of this session will be available after the webinar. For everyone joining us live on Zoom, please use the Q&A panel for content-specific questions so we can address them directly during the session or follow up after the session. If you've got general comments or want to chat with your fellow attendees, use the chat feature. We love seeing your thoughts and reactions.
We'll get started shortly. Before we begin, here's how to earn continuing professional education credit for attending this session. There are no polling questions or attendance checks. Instead, you will demonstrate your knowledge by taking a brief multiple-choice quiz using the Earmark app. Visit earmark.app in your web browser. You can also download the mobile app by scanning the QR code on the screen. Log in, or if you're new, create your free account. Be sure to use a valid email address because that's where we'll send your course completion certificates. From the home screen, scroll down to find the course. You can also tap the magnifying glass icon to search for the course. Tap on the course artwork, then the Enroll button. On the Course tab, you'll find the recording and quiz questions. Complete the quiz to earn your CPE certificate. It takes us a few days to create the course on the app, so if you are attending this session live, please wait a few days. We'll email you a link to the course when it is ready. If you have questions or need help, email us at support@earmarkcpe.com. And now, on to the event.
Welcome everybody to another QB Power Hour. Advance a slide. I would. Nope. There we go. Nope. Apparently, I don't have the title slide of what it is that we're doing today. But however, welcome everyone. My name is DeLong, or Dan with School of Bookkeeping. Worked at it for nearly 18 years and co-hosting today also at the workshop Wednesdays over at schoolofbookkeeping.com. And unfortunately, Matthew's not joining us again today. We wish him all the best for his speedy recovery here. So I am flying solo today. Well, kind of, sort of. I do have a panelist joining us from one of the platforms today. Nigel is joining us from Ramp. Nigel, you want to kind of introduce yourself to the folks, and we'll kick things off here.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan, thank you so much for having me on the webinar today. Super excited to get to talk a little bit more about Ramp and some other kind of expense management and AP platform tools that work really well with QBO. But just to introduce myself, my name is Nigel. I'm a solutions consultant here at Ramp. So you can think of me kind of as your technical expert, happy to dive into the weeds of the product. And my background, at least, is in ERP and FP&A tool implementations before coming to Ramp. So I've been in the accounting software space for quite a while, but super excited to be here today and have some great discussions.
Well, thanks again for joining. So just a little bit about the QB Power Hour webinar series. If you're just joining us for the first time, it's every Tuesday at noon Eastern, and are eligible for CPE credit through Earmark. There's a link there for the channel on the Earmark app. Courses are typically they're not live CPE, so the courses will be available typically about a week after the live session. And of course, you have the links there for the QB Power Hour resources for PDFs of the slides of existing and past webinars that we've had, as well as the recordings and podcast audio. Right. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about, we always start off with a little Intuit news, and it's very fitting, I guess, that our news today is something that we talked about not just a month ago, that expense claims in QuickBooks Online is gone. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and then this particular webinar is kind of a follow-up from one that we did a month ago, where we talk about the spending, managing money out inside of QuickBooks Online and what features and functions that you can do in there. And like most things with QuickBooks, it is one of those things where if you hit the ceiling of what you can do inside of QuickBooks, then it becomes the question or the task is what else is out there that works with QuickBooks. So since we did kind of the whole money out uh, topics a month ago, we wanted to kind of do our very first app showdown, in which we talk about similar apps that are out there and do a side-by-side comparison. So we appreciate Nigel from Ramp joining us here today, being open to talking about other platforms, which is which is kind of a unique circumstance. A lot of times when we have sponsors and that come on the QB Power Hour, talking about other apps is a little bit of a challenge, to kind of navigate that during the webinar. So here we are, actually doing kind of like a Thunderdome where two apps enter, and then hopefully by the end of the webinar today, you may see advantages of either, or maybe pick one over the other for recommendations to you or your clients. So we are going to talk about when a platform is needed inside of things that are necessary, that kind of workflows that kind of drive that, and then really just kind of talking about Ramp versus Corpay One in this particular instance, where we'll talk about some of the feature comparisons, pricing comparison, because that's always on most of our minds as how much is this going to cost me or my client. And then the devil's always in the details as far as the QuickBooks integration part of that, how these things show up or not inside QuickBooks. And then if you are an accountant or open to revenue share, what does that look like as far as their accountant partnership? So that's a high level overview there. So like I said, we did a prior session with regards to spend management. So there's a link for that if you want to kind of see the core functions. But as we're going to mention here, poof, the expense claim just kind of went away without little fanfare. And this is really what it boils down to when it comes to one of the poll questions that we had during that webinar was what is your experience with expense claims? And one of the answers was, oh, well, I'm hearing about it for the first time. So, and that was probably the most common response. And this is one of those things, just like when we talked about tags and the changes with tags inside of QuickBooks Online, is if we don't use it, we are going to lose it. So this is one of those things where it really didn't have a lot of users using it, partially because it was only available inside of QuickBooks Online Advanced. So that kind of turned, this is where one of those things where it just didn't work out for that kind of feature or function. It was, as we kind of talked about before, it was pretty limited. And then, again, you only had it inside of QuickBooks Online Advanced. So it was a very small segment of people that could use it. And then subsequently, because of the limitations of the features and functions of that, it just didn't get a whole lot of adoption. So let's start off with our first polling question. As far as what version of QuickBooks do you support for you and your clients? So while the people are answering, Nigel, have you, with regards to Ramp, how do you communicate changes to the platform and things like that, where there are, maybe features that are added or like with QuickBooks, maybe taken away?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with our partners, we keep them very up to date with regular monthly newsletters of new features that are coming out, things that may be deprecated, but that's on a rare basis. to make sure our partners are well informed with exactly what is coming out new in Ramp, what's changing. And as well, we love to give them an idea of our roadmap. So they have an idea of in the next 3 months, what they can expect, in the next 6 months, what our plan is. So making sure that they're up to date with current releases as well as our planned roadmap as well. So they know exactly what Ramp's going to have to offer.
Well, that's good to know that, you won't just log in one day and expense claims are missing from Ramp without some kind of notification.
Exactly. And it is a fast moving product. We update regularly. Last year, we had over 300 product releases and updates. So we certainly continue to push the envelope with the capabilities of Ramp, and making sure our partners are well informed with that is a huge component of it. So yeah, regular newsletters, working with your relationship lead at Ramp is key. We love to set up quarterly meetings as well to discuss new enhancements and how that can be incorporated into processes. So yeah, we love to be very close with our partners, making sure that they're well informed.
So appreciate that. So yeah, it looks like most folks are using both QuickBooks Online and Desktop today. Followed closely. Let me just share the results here. Looks like QuickBooks Online only is about 24%, and holding steady at about 5% is Desktop. So sharing there, and move on. All right, so let's talk a little bit about when a spending platform is needed. This is typically when you're going to see the bump up to the top of the capabilities or functionalities of QuickBooks, and where you kind of look outside of the QuickBooks ecosystem for that. So some of the limitations that are in QuickBooks, and we kind of mentioned those a little bit earlier. Expense claim, when it comes to expense claims and reimbursements, it was advanced only and no longer available. So if you need functionality of expense claims and reimbursements, you are going to need to look elsewhere, because there isn't any version of QuickBooks that, and of course in Desktop it doesn't do that either. And then when it comes to with QuickBooks or with bill pay, with the online bill pay functions, approvals are going to be best suited inside of Advanced, because you have a high user limit to be able to manage those users, because there are pre-built roles that are built in with the QuickBooks bill pay service. And those roles are going to take up space, right? So if you're in QuickBooks Online Plus, where you only have 5, one of those is a bill payer, and one of those is a bill approver, and one of those is a bill clerk, right, where they're entering in the bills. Well, now you've taken up 3 spaces of your 5 just for those specific roles. And in those roles, you don't have the ability to combine roles and access in QuickBooks Online Plus, where you can kind of comb through a lot of those roles, where in Advanced you can have a little bit of granularity with allowing certain areas and certain functions within various other roles. So it's best with regards to QuickBooks bill pay to utilize Advanced for those features, because you're going to have those roles and the number of roles available there. And then other versions, you end up having limited features and those limited roles and users. And then we all like oversight and control, and when that becomes part of the workflow or the conversation, where it comes to spending limitations, whether it's a certain payee, a certain amount, or a certain category, and approvals to be able to do those types of things, and then the policies that are built in to the to where these workflows are actually stemming from, is if you have those policies that are necessary. If it's over a certain dollar amount, we require approval, or at least something in a receipt, or things of those natures. And then the last thing is adoption of the technology, which oftentimes is a barrier, right? So if you add another app to the guys that are out in the field, purchasing, using the company credit card to purchase job supplies, and making sure that they include the receipt or do the things, adopting the technology into their workflow, or their regular workflow is a consideration or concern, where they're already using the QuickBooks mobile app. It's a lot easier to adopt that technology as opposed to adding another mobile app into their mix. So let's quickly start off with the second poll question. Does your firm recommend workflow improvement software to your clients? Sometimes it's just, you're in your zone. If you do come across a new software platform or something like that, do you recommend to your clients as a part of your advisory services? While you're answering that, let's go ahead and just kind of press on here to our first app, Showdown. I should have some entrance music or something something like that, where we have this Thunderdome type of thing. But all right, so let's talk about the things. And Nigel, I want you to keep me honest here as far as the feature similarities, and then we'll of course get into the differences between the two. But the similarities, the things that are the same, is that most, and if not all, bill payment platforms, spend management platforms are going to have some core features and technology that are very similar, right? The ability to import bills through OCR, which is optical character recognition. I think that's what it stands for, which is a technology that turns images or text on images into data. And all of them are going to have both of them are going to have some email forwarding capabilities, where you specific email address that you're able to forward from your own email, or they can your suppliers can forward it directly to that email, so that the system or the platform is going to be able to scrape off of that information and then go to turn that into data that's usable by the platform. File upload, of course, if you have file attachment, you can take that file and place it into the platform so that it does that as well, so you don't necessarily have to forward an email. And then you're also going to be able to synchronize that from QuickBooks. So if you've already got a bill or something like that inside of QBO, you'll be able to import that into QuickBooks, or I'm sorry, into the platform. And then you're going to have some kind of aspect of a virtual card, right? Where you can kind of spin up a payment card to be able to, put that payment card into your online billing information, right? So that, one of those things, to be able to do that, to be able to pay for those things, and especially if it's a one-off situation. And when I was at, I don't remember if it was Scaling New Heights or if it was Intuit Connect, where I was talking, or went to a breakout session, and they were talking about how they use virtual cards to manage pricing increases, right? So they were able to create a virtual card for each individual thing that they were spending for. And Nigel, does Ramp have a limitation on the number of virtual cards that you're able to create?
No. And yeah, I was going to jump in there to talk a little bit more about virtual cards, but with Ramp, employees can be provided as many virtual cards as desired. And we like to think of virtual cards more so being like an allocated budget or funds that can be utilized for specific spending situations, right? So like you pointed out, a great example is I've got, my Microsoft subscription, I've got my Salesforce subscription. I want to make sure I'm managing those payments effectively. I can create one virtual card that does all of those. And I can even lock it down within Ramp to say this card can only be spent at Microsoft, at Salesforce. Anywhere else automatically declines. Or I can create, one virtual card for each of those. And you can set up budgets as well to say it should only be able to have, $5,000 spent per month, which may be equal to one of your subscription amounts. And that way, if you end up getting, price increases from vendors without being made aware, or they accidentally double bill you, Ramp can help you negate that from occurring and prevent it from happening and not have to deal with it retroactively. So definitely lots that we could dive into with virtual cards and the capabilities there. But the key kind of takeaway from it is it's an allocated budget that has specific spending controls established within it that dictates how much and where those cards can be spent.
Yeah, and the was that they did a example of our utility bill or something, a phone bill, which is oftentimes it just increases without your without your awareness to it,
right?
So by being able to put those controls on one particular card, a virtual card rather than a physical card, and put that as their payment method, when those things happen, there's a spike in my my phone bill, and that will actually trigger an alert, or the card itself would actually be declined, right? And then that'll get attention, right? Like once you've got an an email like that coming into your inbox of like, oh, we're going to turn off your phones if you don't pay this, or something like that, that will actually allow them to control their spending when those things actually increase, and at least get to the bottom of why did it increase, and then of course they can increase the amount, and then push it through again and go through.
Yeah, exactly. And another great example too with that of, like you said, controlling our subscriptions, make sure we're not seeing any fluctuations in pricing we didn't expect. But also, right, I'm giving this virtual card information to this vendor. They have the credit card number. And unfortunately, data leaks happen. And as much as we want to try and avoid them, we need to make sure we're prepared to handle those effectively. And like we've said, by locking down this card, saying it can only be used at, my specific cell provider, or, like we've used Microsoft or Salesforce. If there happens to be a data leak, that card information gets into nefarious hands, they can't spend it anywhere. It's locked down to just those specific vendors. So we're helping to prevent fraud from occurring rather than identifying it and now having to address it. We're preventing it from even getting into your system and having that spend ever go out. So it can be huge in that use case as well.
Now, question from Rich there in the chat, and it goes to the next thing. What are spending cards versus credit cards? Now, these are both of them are MasterCards, right? They can be used anywhere, or is yours Visa? I'm sorry if I misspoke.
Visa is what Ramp uses, yeah.
So Ramp uses the Visa network, and Corpay actually uses the MasterCard network. So they are accepted anywhere that those are accepted. So Visa, MasterCard, pretty much everywhere. But they are not credit cards in the sense that you want to carry a balance. I found this out the hard way with Corpay, that they were not credit cards, even though they have the MasterCard logo on them. It was just not clear initially, and that's one of the things that I want to be clear about, is that these are spending cards, very similar to like American Express, where there is a spending amount or limit that you can put on there in a billing cycle, but you want to pay that the entire balance. You do not want to carry a balance from month to month, because the fees that are associated with that are pretty high. So these are, keep these in mind, that these are spending cards. So they will give you a little bit ease on the cash flow situation, because you'll be able to use them as credit cards. They will go into the monthly statement, but you want to make sure that you pay that balance off at the end of your statement. And I'll just kind of ask you, so you can put in automatic to pay those things as part of your setup, right?
Exactly. So Dan, I think you hit it perfectly on the head. Of while you do kind of build up a statement balance over the month, you do then pay it off at the end of every month. So you're not carrying that balance from month to month, accruing interest on it. We're not built to function in that way. So that's really the core difference. So credit cards, you can think of, I can hold that balance and just keep it month over month and pay interest on it like I'm borrowing funds, versus Ramp is at the end of each month, I'm just paying off that balance that I owe.
And that's also similar to Corpay One as well.
Right.
And as we had talked, there's limits that you can put on the card spending to users, whether it's specific payees or specific categories of payments. And then as we talk about some of the differences, we'll kind of talk about what you can do with those limitations. Both of them are going to have an accountant with a client dashboard. We're very similar to like QuickBooks Online, where you see your practice or your firm, and have access to all of your clients from there. Online bill pay is similar, being able to send checks or send the online bill pay functionality, and then the card management, as well as employee reimbursement when they're using their own card to be able to purchase materials or job supplies for the company. Both of those will have that functionality as well, and they both have their own mobile application available to manage these things, either for the company as well as the individual user as well. Well, let's talk about a little bit about the differences between. So when it comes to the OCR technology, the document scanning, one of the things that really impressed me about Ramp is the ability for multiple line support. So when you have, a really big bill, to be able to, import that, and then it will automatically segregate or separate out the individual line items on the body of the invoice or the bill, and then you can then map that to individual lines, as well as being able to what's the word I'm looking for? Being able to map to products that are in your QuickBooks, right? So you can have that item level mapping, whereas Corpay One you can split, but you have to do that manually. So that's an extra steps to be able to split things out.
Exactly. Yeah. And just to add a little more detail, we've had our customers have multiple hundreds of lines on their bills and have Ramp be able to separate it out all for them. So, right, rather than having to click add line, enter in the information, add line, Ramp's going to do all of that for you, so you can come in and just have kind of a quick review rather than having to actually be adding that manually. So it can certainly be a significant time saver.
And as far as recognizing the item or category in Ramp, is it something like it will look for the products and services and map to it if it does have an equal thing, or do people need to go into the platform?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways that can work. First, if we're leveraging like a purchase order as well, we want to also have procurement within Ramp, and we connect that purchase order to our bill, and we're establishing that inventory item on the PO. That can easily be translated, so that way we do have that marked for us. With currently in our product, we don't necessarily pick out that specific inventory item for you and code it if it's not on the PO, but where we're moving towards, and this is going to be kind of our next evolution of bill pay that we're coming out with in just the next few months. So it really should be 1 to 2 months from now. Is we're going to be having an AI agent come in, and that's going to enhance the OCR capability. So it's going to learn, oh, okay, when this kind of invoice comes in and it lists out these specific items, and we notice we're coding those to specific inventory items or expense items in QuickBooks, it'll automatically start applying that for us. So that's where we're moving towards, of having an intuitive system that will understand that. But right now it's a little bit more of, let's let Ramp know through other parts of our process, and then that can kind of automatically tag it for us.
Yeah. And one of the things, the second bullet here on Ramp, as far as like the cutting edge digital receipt management, what I wanted to, that was a long way to say, it helps with fraud detection, because sometimes, employees and their receipt submissions, they might be overstepping. I think that's probably the nicest way to say it. David Leary and Blake did an episode of how in AI can basically generate a photorealistic receipt that looks like any place that you've been to, right? Like you can take a Depot receipt or Walmart receipt and train AI to create a receipt that looks like maybe there's a coffee stain on it, or it's wrinkled, or things like that, and to the blind eye, it could definitely be something that you might just let slip through because it looks like it. And they were mentioning during the accounting podcast that Ramp had already, this was like a couple months ago, like Ramp had already implemented in being able to detect those things. Talk a little bit about.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? We've been talking about AI, of all the help it's going to provide us, the advanced capabilities now we have offered, but that also comes on the other end of, it's going to provide maybe some problems for us, some headaches, some different ways that people are trying to, gain the system with it. And like you said, Dan, it's AI receipts have been something that has now become a problem of, how is a manager going to know that? Like it looks like a perfectly good receipt based on what the employee sent, but can be a completely fake charge. So what Ramp's been able to do is basically able to view kind of the back end of the receipt, the actual file information, and there's key information within there that helps us be aware of when it's AI generated. So we've, like you said, have kind of started to lead the industry in coming up with that capability and almost getting ahead of it before it becomes this massive problem, understanding that this is something that is going to occur. So let's get ahead of it and provide the protections for our customers so they're not falling victim to it.
Yeah, it's very impressive when I heard that not only is it a problem, but you guys have already taken steps to get ahead of that, because AI is, my analogy of AI, it's an enhancer. It's like alcohol, right? If you're a jerk and you drink alcohol, you're just going to be a bigger jerk. If you're a friendly person and you drink alcohol, you just become more jolly and friendly. Right? So it's one of those things that if you are nefarious to begin with, AI is only going to help you be more of that. If you are, utilizing AI for good, right, then it will continue to do those things.
Exactly.
Another thing that it kind of gives a nod or a difference to Ramp is the additional features, being able to put in it helps you create your policy as far as your spending policy and what is required of the individuals that are using it. And then you also have travel options. You want to talk a little bit about those things there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is key for a business of setting up what their policy is and how you want to enforce expenses, bills, and travel. And Ramp helps to ingest that and then enforce it for you. So whether it's as employees are booking travel, they're made aware right away of what is in and out of policy, whether it's flight prices to different classes of tickets, right? Business class versus economy class. What do we allow depending on the duration of the flight, how that fluctuates, how early we like to have flights booked. Do we let our team members book, a few days before? Do we require 2 weeks before? Same thing with hotels and cars, right? Of being able to help guide them into what's in and out of policy. So we're not having to retroactively review and make sure they're doing the right thing. Ramp's helping to guide them through that. And then where we're moving towards too as well, and we're going to be diving into this in future slides too, but is right, again, these AI agents that we're building into the platform. And what we're starting with is our approval agent. And what this does is it can read, understand, and enforce that policy. What we're finding is better than the actual managers who usually are reviewing transactions. So Ramp's able to intuitively and very smartly be able to review transactions and understand if they fall in and out of policy and flag it, reject transactions for our team members and be that first line reviewer instead of managers, right? So helping to take off some of that time commitment of just reviewing things and not always knowing, is this in and out of policy, and just saying, sure, review it anyway. Ramp's going to help enforce that even more cleanly. And also as it does that and it learns, what employees are doing and how managers are saying if this should or should not be included, it can start to automatically update your expense policy to reflect that for you. So it can continue to enhance your policy, which then allows it to better enforce it as it goes. So it's kind of a dual system of let's enforce it and make sure things are staying in line with what we determine is acceptable, as well as let's continue to improve it. As we see what is being allowed and not allowed, how can we continue to refine it to make it even stronger? So that's kind of how we like to think about this agent within Ramp that helps to accomplish this for you.
Yeah, we're learning a new term called agentic AI, which, as we talk about inside of QuickBooks with the AI agents, I'm sure other platforms like yourself and others are using those tools internally to be able to enhance their own product. One of the things that gives the nod to Corpay is the ability to auto push transactions to QBO. It's a double-edged sword, right? Like you are going to be managing the rules and the workflows inside of the platform, and you have to be specific to every workflow as far as a categorization, automatic categorization of transactions, and it will push those transactions into QuickBooks without your interaction. And we'll talk about that when we get to the QuickBooks integration piece, but Corpay One does allow that to occur. So you can kind of automate those things, but things get a little bit more complicated. You're going to want to have those oversights anyway, and it is something that you're probably going to need to review on a regular basis, whether it's you or client. So let's talk about pricing, because we all want to know, how much is this costing, right? So with Ramp, the platform itself, especially for QBO, you have a plan called free. That sounds very enticing. And for QuickBooks Online, it is, for the core offering and the core feature set, it is free. And one thing that is different, I think, with a unique distinction of Ramp is that it is completely free when it comes to the transactional fees. Like most other, especially the bill pays, right, is depending on how you pay those bills, whether it's ACH, same day ACH checks or what have you, there's a per transactional fee when it comes to that, but it's not so with regards to Ramp, right, Nigel?
Exactly. So like you had said, when you're leveraging like a QuickBooks Online integration, you're able to utilize Ramp completely free, no user charge, no transaction fees, whether it's cards and bill pay. So ACH is checks, 0 transaction fees on all of those. And there's even capabilities to utilize to waive any types of transaction fees, like same day ACHs or domestic and international wires, which usually carry fees. If you utilize one of our tools called a Ramp Treasury account, basically being a high yield checking account that's managed within Ramp, you can waive all of those fees. So now from checks to international wires, all of it completely free transactions when being able to leverage Ramp. So can certainly be an awesome offering. And like we said, especially these businesses that are on QBO and we just want an advanced platform, Ramp offers a totally free version for you to be able to utilize.
And now if you are using desktop, that does, indicate, there isn't a free option or for that. You have to use the Plus in order to integrate with that. You also integrate with other accounting platforms at that level, NetSuite and other platforms as well. But if you are using desktop, you do have the desktop integration. Plus is $15 per user per month, but you still don't have the transactional fees on top of that. Then other features that are part of the Plus level is being able to auto lock some card spend, so you can set up things to be able to automatically, turn off the card. Parallel approvers, so to avoid a bottleneck, so you can go to either or individuals. Advanced routing where it's automatically. Tell me about that, because I wasn't quite sure what advanced routing actually is.
Yeah, so with our approvals, when you're on the free version, it's mainly like based on different amounts, or I can just set up, basic approval workflows of when a transaction comes through, make sure this person reviews it. But with more advanced routing, we can do it based on the specific vendor that's transacted with. And this can be card or bill pay transactions. We can route it to specific individuals, or even based on how we code line items in the field. So if we're leveraging, right, like our QuickBooks department or QuickBooks class fields, as we're coding line items based on how we enter that information in, we can route approvals. So it can say, ooh, let's go to this department head to approve the transaction, or let's go to this location leader to approve the transaction. So we can get really granular with either the transactional information or the user who's submitting that transaction. We can route that approval accordingly, and it can be conditioned of if it's this department and it's over a certain threshold amount, right? We can start to kind of add on multiple conditions to create a specific approval workflow we want. So you can just get really advanced and really granular with how approvals can flow when you're utilizing Plus.
Got it. And then of course there's no transactional fees. And then on the card spend, you have a 1 to 1.5 hatchback. Is it basically as a statement credit, or how does that get awarded in Ramp's speech?
Yeah. So we like to promote as being much more simple, right? We don't have this certain cash back here on certain types of spend versus points here, and not having that kind of point amount be fluctuating of, companies can now start devaluing your points that you thought that you had, and now it's worth even less. So we go the cash back route, but how you can utilize that, a couple different ways. The first couple options are if you want to use it to make Ramp even cheaper, you can use it towards your statement payment. So instead of having to pay that full amount, you can utilize any of your cash back to help minimize what you're actually going to owe back on that card. You can also use it to pay for Ramp Plus. So if you are leveraging our Plus platform, you can use your statement credits to build it towards your Plus payment. Or instead, you can also just pull gift cards for different types of vendors, whether it's airlines, hotels, and even restaurants and coffee shops. You can pull, or you can cash in your cash back for different gift cards that you can use for company events that you can distribute to employees, however you would like to have it utilized. So a lot of different ways that you can leverage that Ramp cash back.
Excellent. And then we have a question in the Q&A, and I feel this is a good place to ask that. They, because both of these platforms, in order to get the most out of the card spend, is to transition to the spending card, right? So to be able to do those limits and those types of things, being able to do that requires the company to apply and change the card that they're actually utilizing. So they bring up a very good point, because they will have a variety of different rewards. And in this particular case, it's flight miles and reward points for Southwest, right? So if they move to one of these platforms where it's, simple, simple enough for Ramp, and it's a little bit more complicated with with regards to Corpay, depending on what it is that they're spending on. How does that equate to those different types of rewards that maybe they know and like with their current card, that they would be losing loyalty points or flight miles or things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question too. And Ramp certainly knows that that's a very valuable component of credit cards, is getting some of those reward points that we can utilize. So like we said, with the cash back that you get, I can use that for cashing it in at Southwest Airlines and so on by purchasing either gift cards or miles through our kind of redemption or cashback platform of where you actually want to pull that cashback from, or how you want to redeem it, I should say. But it is a little bit different of, right? Ramp's focus is, while we want to give you those rewards, our goal is to, instead of incentivize or reward you for spending, we want to actually help you control and minimize your spending. So how can we find ways for you to cut costs, whether it's through things like our price intelligence tool that helps you understand the subscriptions you're paying for, if you're paying above market prices, and tell you that and help you renegotiate, to, like we said, policy enforcement, making sure that any spend that's occurring is actually legitimate, worthy spend, and allowing Ramp to be that police force for you. So we are focused on more so saving money than fully kind of maximizing rewards. And our rewards is based on the business as a whole rather than kind of an individual card holder too.
So you may lose, the Admirals Club or, the airport lounge access, but with the money that you're saving or allowing it to come back, it may be a wash, right? So you might be able to.
Right. That's the goal. We want to help you grow your business, right? Cut costs and grow. And now you're going to be getting far greater returns than just simple credit card points that I think it certainly is nice. I like my credit card points too. But when we're talking about the opportunity with growing your business, that's where Ramp wants to lean in and help you accomplish that. And then you'll have plenty of money for your lounges and airlines too.
Exactly. Now, Corpay, the pricing is vastly different, right? So they have no platform or user fees as long as you're using it with the card, right? So if you sign up for just the bill pay option, there's typically a platform fee based on the documents that are processed. That gets very granular when it comes to that. Like it's tiered based on volume, and it's also important to note that things pulled out of QuickBooks that show up in the Corpay One platform are considered a document, right? So if you're paying 50 cents each, and it brings in a whole bunch of bills that you entered in manually or batch imported into QuickBooks, that can get pretty pricey pretty quickly, even if you're on, comparing that to like Ramp Plus, where maybe you have 5 users, that's $75 a month, right? So it could add up to that pretty quickly, even without the per user fee, right? And then of course they are in the model of the transactional fees, so they are less than some of the other folks that are out there when it comes to the transactional fees, but there still is a transactional fee for ACH, dollar per check. If you want the faster, then there's fees on top of that as well. Now, with regards to the rewards, their platform is a little bit differently, where they have 1% on all spending. It is Corpay One was just acquired. Well, I say just, it was several years ago. They were acquired by FleetCor, which is a fuel card company, right? So they are now, putting that emphasis on fleet fuel cards, so you get more for fuel. So if you are, if you're in a company that has a large fleet of vehicles, this will, give you a little bit more on that, as well as travel for restaurants in network, as well as hotel as well. I did want to note there that I did see that it's $20 maximum for the 5% on hotels. but everything after that goes to that 1%, right? So if it is a hotel that would give you, more than $20, it caps it at $20, and then everything over that is at 1%. All right, so let's talk about the QuickBooks integration. So you have the ability in Ramp and Corpay to vendor synchronization. So being able to pull in your suppliers and vendors from your QuickBooks, you don't have to re-enter all of that. With regards to the cards with multiple card holders and with all these virtual cards, it would get very cumbersome to manage all of those accounts, separate accounts inside of QuickBooks. So with both platforms, you have one QB account to manage all of the cards, right? So the synchronization between the two platforms is going to put all of the card transactions into one account inside of QuickBooks. So you won't have that balance issue when it comes to what's at the bank versus what's in the account, because you don't have that parent-child relationship inside of your QuickBooks chart of accounts, where your payments are coming out of the parent account and the charges are on the other. So you don't have to try to reconcile all of those inside of QuickBooks. So it's just one account for all cards being mapped. You have Ramp has the ability to do product service mapping. So being able to identify, push bills to QuickBooks so that it actually does go to the product, and talk a little bit about that, Nigel, as far as being able to map to a particular product or service. Does it see that, or how does that work?
Yeah, exactly. So we're able to pull in that information from QuickBooks so that way we can apply it to different transactions. That way, as it flows back over, we're able to have the expense or the that product service appropriately kind of contributed, so that way we can have full reporting capabilities on it. So yeah, we're able to pull in a lot of information from QuickBooks, so that way we're not minimizing the capabilities of what information we want to include on our transactions.
And then there's no reliance of the bank feeds in either platform. So as a matter of fact, you can't even find the financial institution when you try to connect it. So good news, it won't break. So it won't disconnect because you're connecting it from inside of the platform as opposed to connecting it through the bank feed and then, putting in your login information and those types of things. So it won't forget your login, which is good. Double-edged sword there. With Ramp, all integration and sync must start from the platform. And we kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, that, in order to push a transaction from Ramp into synchronize it into QuickBooks, you have to acknowledge, approve it, and send it. Whereas in Corpay One, you're able to set up some workflows and auto categorizations, and those will automatically synchronize into your QuickBooks. Double-edged sword. If you send, you have to identify all of them in order for this to work smoothly. So the next time that you go to a brand new place, it's going to, if it's not caught by, some kind of workflow or rule that you set up into Corpay, it will just choose the default, which I was getting a whole bunch of transactions to meals and entertainment because that was the default, even though they're not. So that is one of the things that is actually in my workflows. Like if I see a large amount in meals and entertainment, I know I need to go back into Corpay and set up my advanced workflows. And then with Oh, you want to add
I was going to
something to
say,
that?
yeah, just to add and provide some clarity too of, yeah, it's credit card transactions and reimbursements in Ramp. We do have you, like you said, Dan, tell us when to sync. What transactions have we reviewed and we know are good to go that we can move into QuickBooks? We are investigating and kind of trialing, having it be a little bit more event triggered of, hey, if certain qualifications are met, let's just sync that automatically. However, with bills and bill payments, that is going to trigger automatically out of Ramp after, you hit a certain event of my bill's been fully approved. Now let's sync it automatically to Ramp. We've had payment executed, automatically sync it to QBO. Sorry, I meant to say sync both of the bill and bill payment into QBO. So it can kind of depend on what transaction type of a credit card or a bill of whether or not Ramp's going to want you to trigger it or if it'll trigger it automatically for you. But similar to Corpay, we do have the capability to create these rules to help you categorize any expenses. So we do have that functionality as well. However, it's just at the end of the day, we want you to say, yep, this one's good to go, push it to QuickBooks when it comes to credit card transactions. So
there's reasons for it. So that's it's not just something that you haven't thought of. And the fact that you are thinking of if everything goes smoothly, then go ahead and automatically push it. Radar is nice to hear. Now, as far as the accountant partnership / revenue share, both of them are going to have a client accountant dashboard where you'll be able to see your, all of your clients, like some kind of, being able to see things across all clients, and then you can go into each individual client themselves. With regard, and one of the things that really impressed me about Ramp is the onboarding sessions. When you activate your account with Ramp, you're immediately, I don't want to say bombarded, but you are encouraged to attend some onboarding sessions for the things that you use. So they'll have different sessions and they're recorded or live, but being able to ask questions as you get familiar with using it is a good thing to do. You can go in and view things on the bill pay, on the card spend, on all the other things that Ramp offers, and it's pretty early on in the whole process. And then your firm gets Plus for free. So if you sign up for an accountant partnership with Ramp, you get a $500 credit as well as Plus for free for your firm. Now, is that for all users, or is there like a certain number of users that they're allowed for the firm?
Yeah, I don't think it's limited there with number, but yeah, it be at least for your firm. But like I said, it's not to avoid any confusion, not for your clients who you would bring on to Ramp. They would not get Plus for free. However, through our partnership, you can negotiate more preferred pricing. So instead of paying that full $15 a month or $12 a month if paid annually, we can negotiate with you so that way your clients get preferred pricing by getting referred to Ramp through you. So we can help with that, and then on top of it, kind of the bonuses that you can get for referrals as well.
And then there's also a tiered bonus based on the number of referrals, right? So whatever that credit might be, it continues to expand as you bring on more clients into the Ramp platform. And then there's also an alternative of the recurring revenue shared option, where it's based off of the bill pay spend and the card spend. There's some secret sauce figuring out whatever that works on, and then you get monthly recurring revenue based off of the account spending that they do inside the platform. Whereas Corpay One, it's a $500 referral bonus for all referrals, which should either be a statement credit or a gift. So overall, wrapping it up here, I know we're a little bit over, but if you can stay, great. If not, that's fine too. Ramp's a complete spend management platform, and they are future focused. So like when we're talking about the AI fraud detection, policy creation and uploads, travel policies and those services, the core functions for your clients are at no cost, even the transactional fees. And you can split the services. So you don't have to necessarily do all or nothing. So you could just use it for a bill payment platform as opposed to a card management. With Corpay One, it's a good platform. The advantage there is that there's no user fee. So if you are in the plus version of Ramp, pairing those types of things, there is no additional user fee. So if you have a lot of users, that could be a cost consideration. They are focused mostly on the spending cards because of that acquisition from FleetCor. So you'll see a lot of advantages when you do use all, the entire platform. If you have multiple cards or, the number of different cards that you have, and they are kind of drifting away from the bill pay functionality. Not to say that it's going to go away, but just that less of their emphasis is on the bill pay function. So if you're looking for new things, then that's definitely where Ramp is not on that. And QBO bills count as documents. So you're bringing in transactions. That document fee could add up quite a bit by bringing in those transactions that are already in books to begin with. All right. So the last polling question. Was this useful? You'd like to learn more about either platform. Nigel, any closing thoughts there before we wrap things up today?
No, I think we covered a lot of good information today. Definitely two great tools that can kind of help in different ways or provide different advantages to your business and your clients for helping them, increase their capability when it comes to their spend management. I think the last kind of call that I'll mention is please feel free, reach out to us if you'd love to see Ramp in action, see what expensing in Ramp can look like. Of when you use your Ramp credit cards, we can have your expenses be zero touch. If I swipe my Ramp card and my expense report is done completely for me. So more than happy to dive into Ramp with any of you. So please feel free to reach out. We're happy to provide contact information as a follow-up so that way we can show you Ramp live in action and how it could be of value to you and your clients.
Okay. Yeah. And we've got a question about like 1099s. I saw through, I don't know if you were able to mention that, if we wanted to talk about that live, as far as does it process the 1099s, or are they treated as ACH payments? How does that work with regards to the 1099 processing and or the 1099 kits?
Yeah. So the way that we look at 1099s is we're going to be monitoring the spend that's occurring with businesses on both cards and bill pay, and then marking if that vendor would qualify to be a 1099 vendor instead, and just establish that on the accounts. That way you can see, oh, here are all my vendors that are 1099 eligible, and file them appropriately. But we do not kind of issue the 1099s or any of the paperwork related to it. We're simply helping you identify if vendors fall within that. So I'm not familiar with the credit card processor is supposed to issue 1099K. That may be something that Visa could step in with, but I hadn't heard that of credit card processors do that. And Ramp certainly would not be considered a debit card, as we are not transacting and then pulling from your bank account right away. We're building up a statement balance and then you pay at the end of the month. So I think there's definitely some nuances we could get into there.
Absolutely. All right. So thank you, Nigel, for joining me, because I would hate to do this by myself. So I appreciate you joining us here today, as well as everyone that attended our live session. We are going to have this recorded and be the podcast as well in the coming moments. We also have our Power Hour store for your swag needs. If you have specific questions about QuickBooks or anything that you need help with, we have quick answers over at schoolbookkeeping.com, available for daily, monthly, or annual options. And next time on the QB Power Hour, in a couple weeks, we will be talking about our updates. So we'll be having the update session where we'll kind of fill in some of these AI agents that we've been hearing so much about. and some Facebook Q&A that we've seen as far as more common posts next time on the QuickBooks Power Hour. So we appreciate you joining us here today. Nigel, any closing comments?
No, I think that's it. Really appreciate everyone's time today, learning a little bit more about Ramp and Corpay. And again, happy to dive further into it if anyone would love to see a live demo of the product.
And we have those links on our landing page, so the review and whatnot, you'll be able to do all that from the QBPowerHour.com page. And see you next time on the QuickBooks Power, and have a great day.
Awesome.